Have you ever heard the saying, without a vision, man shall perish? Also a woman as well. Well, you're in
Man
luck
and or
because
woman shall perish.
yeah, people will perish. Well, you're in luck because today's episode we're talking about, do you need to have direction in life? This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
So, yes or no? Do you need to have direction in life?
Yeah, I don't know. This is my gut says I feel like yes, in the sense of like I think you need to have I don't know about let me say it. I don't know about direction as much as values. You need to have an idea of who you are and what you want. Because I do think, and I don't know if it's just me, but I do think we get a lot of value from working towards things. Like I think human beings by their very nature, we're adaptable, we're intelligent, right? We like creating things, and I think by our very like sort of nature, it's in us to want to sort of make our world better and our lives better. So I think having direction can make that a lot easier and can give you, purpose, right? Because like we talk about that a lot with the existentialists, that existential crisis, that dread is often from a crisis of meaning. And so meaning can be derived from the purpose we assign ourselves, right? That direction that we give ourselves in life can be very meaningful. So I think it is important in that sense. And what do you?
I think yes and no.
Which is
And
most things, yeah.
yeah, right. So yes, because I do believe that if you have direction and you maintain that direction, eventually you'll get there. It's like that analogy of the ship leaving a port. If you have the compass set and if you're going in that direction, you're going to get to where you want to go. But
Yeah.
if you just let it go wherever, take the rudder out of the water, you don't know where it's going to end up. So I think yes, in that sense, it's important. But then I also wonder, I'm like, do we actually have any control over that stuff? You know, is it all just made up? Is it just this illusion of control that we actually have any direction, any say whatsoever? So yeah, there's that whole thing.
I don't think, I mean, that's the funny thing. I don't think a lot of it, I don't think we do. I think, it's funny, but look, none of us make a choice of where we're born, what time period we're born in, and the circumstances when we
Dude,
grow up or anything.
I heard the other day that they've done studies where like the flavor of ice cream that you like is very often like dependent upon your family. So
Yeah,
it's like crazy stuff. We're like, no, I like this one because Rocky Road is the
nothing to
way
do
to
with
go.
it.
And it's like, nah, that's
Yeah.
probably just because that's what your dad liked and that's what you
Yeah,
grew up
and that's
with.
what you
Yeah.
grew up eating. And so
Yeah.
you have a taste for that. Like we forget how much of us, of who we are forms at an early age before we're even really conscious. Right. And before we're making our own decisions, because even as like a young teen, you don't have your own choices that you're making. But I think that's part of it,
And
right? That we,
like most of this stuff is just the antithesis of what your parents did. Like when you're a teen,
yeah.
it's not even like you're choosing. You're just like
And well,
whatever
and
they're
then
doing, I'm doing the opposite.
the opposite. And then when you get to the point where you are choosing, you get to college and stuff, you're probably making choices based on what people told you was the right thing to do and stuff like that. So you're still not really making choices. So I think like if we're lucky, I think most of us, when we get to an older age, start making choices for ourselves, but they're still going to be heavily determined by all that prerequisite, all that crap in the past that's now giving us, set of viable choices.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So
that
it's
being
kind of
said,
interesting.
I still weigh heavily on it is important to have direction and values as well. But I think direction is important because there's like two ways to have direction. There's the going away from something and there's the going towards something. So
Yeah.
like initially when I first started, it was going away from something. Like I had a job and stuff that I did not like, and I was just like, get me the F out of there. But then eventually, after some like refining, I was able to kind of pick a direction that I wanted to go. And so now it's more like going towards something. And I still think that's very important because it does help it helps define a lot of decisions that I have to make throughout the day. Through,
Well, it helps you
through
make decisions, right? That are towards something that are meaningful. Because I think if you don't have direction, the decisions become kind of meaningless because they're not really working towards anything, right?
Mhm.
It's like what's gonna make me happy now, whatever, like that kind of stuff. Instead of like, what am I really trying to do with my life, right? What am I really trying to? Because we all have this opportunity to do something. And I'm not talking about legacy and crap. I'm just talking about, what you want to do with your time that you have here, right?
Mhm.
And it's interesting though. I like the idea of going towards and away from too, because I think when you get to the point where you can go towards something, it's still a refining process though. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. Like they'll get a goal that gives them meaning, but they don't continuously refine it throughout the process. And so you
Mhm.
can, by doing that, you can still get stuck in something that ends up being bad for you because you haven't refined that goal over time,
Like for
you know?
instance, the one that most people start with is I want to make a lot of money. I gotta be rich. I gotta be a millionaire. I gotta do this. And if that's your goal, it'll be completely unfulfilling because guess what?
Yeah,
There's always going to be people who are richer than you. There's always going to be stuff you can't afford. There's always going to be that stuff. But like, yeah, sure, that's a great goal to begin with, but then you have to kind of refine it because what's the point of having money? It's like if you can Scrooge McDuck and just swim in a
yeah.
bathtub full of gold coins, but like,
Who cares?
what's the point of that? It's not going to give you really any fulfillment in life.
And if
So
you try
what
to
is it?
dive in a thing of gold coins, you're gonna get a concussion.
Yeah.
I don't know how he managed that. Maybe it was the
Well, he's
beak.
a duck, you know, slides.
Yeah,
It's like that saying, like gold off a duck's back.
yeah, right on. Yeah, it's funny, too, that I think that whole idea, because I think every American thinks that when they're younger, like I want a huge house and a lot of money. And it is a funny goal because it is one of those things where, like there is no purpose beyond the having. Like when you have a goal of like I want to create this thing or I want to become an artist, right? Like there's lots of ways to do that, and there's lots of ways to manage success, right? But when it's just money, like you said, you can get a lot of money, but there's always going to be people with more. And if that's your only bar for success, you're going to get in this trap of then just pursuing wealth for wealth's sake, which is not really helping anyone and not making you happy. And it's
Hmm.
like it cracks me up too that we have so many people that we can point to who are just miserable, who have all the things other people want. And it's like, well, then clearly that's not working. Like they're missing something. And I think
Hmm.
this is why I think like having that direction, but also starting to refine your values is important because it can help you kind of refine that purpose as you go to meet your needs, your existential needs better and live a happy life.
Hmm. Yeah, and also learning how to be happy
Yeah, that
because
too.
it's like something that you don't really like. We have this faulty mental model that we need to do, be, or
Of
have something in
everything.
order to be
Yeah.
happy. When like really happiness, if you can't have it right here and now, you're not going to be able to have it later. So,
No, that's the funny thing about it, right? It's a mental state.
yeah.
You know, it is one of the weirdest things when you read like, you go back and you read like Marcus Aurelius or like any of those guys that are looking at flourishing. It is a mental state, is what they like I said, character state. It's a state of being in the world. And it's funny because it doesn't necessarily require anything else. Like it does to an extent of like you need to work on yourself to get there, but like that's about it. And yet we always define happiness in a way, and I think maybe this comes from advertising and stuff too
Hmm.
of like it's always a causal relationship of get X or Y or Z, then you'll be happy.
Well, you got to look at
And
who's, you got to look at it, you follow the money, look at who's to
yeah,
profit. Of course,
and it's
advertising is going to say you need something in order to be happy.
well,
Yeah.
what cracks me up too is you look at like happiness indexes when they do those like evaluations like globally,
Hmm.
and wealthy countries always fall
Hmm.
super low, and then poor countries usually are higher up, and it's because you have usually have a stronger community, you usually have less stress about these things because they're just not possible.
Hmm.
Like I think that's the other thing. Like, we've had this realm of possibility that's so great that it almost is like paralysis for decision making too for people. They don't know what's going to make them happy because there's just too many options sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's an interesting thing because so this whole concept of wanting things because the idea of happiness you're going to be happy by having something. So like the wanting makes it so that you can't be happy now. But then if you get it, you're no longer wanting, but you're not happy
Yeah.
because you're not caring about the things that you already have.
Well, they've also done study too. They've done studies that have shown that the wanting is more important than the actual acquisition. We get more happiness out of the desire for things and the thinking about getting them than we do from
Which
actually
is why
getting
you
them a
should
lot of times.
always get the slowest shipping on Amazon.
Yeah. Then you get all that time to wait and get excited about it. No,
Yeah,
it's
you
true
have
that
to wait 24 hours instead of 2 hours.
yeah. Before that drone flies over your house and throws things at you. Yeah. But did you ever read Epicurus? He had his conception of I really like his idea of like basically desire. He had this idea of like natural and artificial desires,
Mhm.
or he calls them like natural and vain sometimes.
Mhm.
But so the natural is like stuff you have to have, like you have to eat, you have to drink, right? You need shelter, those sorts of things like that are gonna make us be able to live our lives, right? And live them well.
Yeah.
Those are like things that you biologically need or like, psychologically need. And then you have vain or artificial, and these are desires that come from outside of you. So it's like social pressure. Advertising would be a good example in contemporary times, right? And I think I always really like that idea because it's like if you really think about it, how much of the things that we want are really things that we need? One, for our own health, our happiness, whatever. And two, if they're not things that we directly need for that, how much of them come from us rather than from pressures from outside? And I think if you really think about that, most of what you probably want is pressures from outside. It's artificial
Hmm.
desires.
Yeah, I always like back when I learned about personal finance, they teach you a lot about advertising because that's the way people lose a lot of money is by
Yeah.
buying stuff they don't need. And I've ever since then, I've always been shocked by times when I wanted things that I didn't want before seeing an advertisement or something like that. You know, you'd watch a commercial or you'd just be scrolling somewhere and an advertisement would pop up and you'd want something and I would be like, wow, I didn't even know that existed before
Yeah.
then. And then now I want it. That's insane advertising.
Yeah. Well, think about what's funny is too, like, and I think about this sometimes because I like looking like I like, I mentioned I like photography and stuff. So I like checking out what comes out for that and stuff. And I'll look at stuff. And I sometimes think it's funny that most of the websites we go to are just products. It's just crap to sell. That's all it is. And it's like if you're not aware of that, you can get caught in that like desire, and then you start to get depressed because you don't have the stuff that you're seeing everywhere. And then that runs into the issue of like credit and stuff and going out and getting stuff you don't need or don't. It really is a mess. It's
Hmm.
really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, that is what were we talking about?
Forgot.
Okay, well that's
Wait,
the episode for
wait, hold on,
today.
wait. Oh,
If you
let me figure
enjoyed
it
it,
out. Oh, do you
just
need direction?
yeah, do you actually need direction in life or in making an episode? Apparently not. But
Apparently, no, you don't. We got all
this,
over the place
yeah,
today.
if you enjoyed it, you can find us on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Andy.